Okay, welcome again to Wickerson Studios. My name is Michael Wickerson, and what I am doing is I am looking at this tutorial, the GH Introductory Tutorial by Nilafar Zakar, which is pretty incredible. I've gone through it and certainly received whatever I had to do getting started. You'll go into here and oops, I was already there. You can go in and see the course curriculum. You can see the instructor, and she's pretty amazing at providing the basics. I hope she does some intermediate and some advanced, and you'll get a little certificate when you're done, which is kind of fun. But the course curriculum is pretty basic, and what I've done is gone in, and you'll notice that there's a GH introduction, conditionals, functions, points, curves, geometries, and resources. So although I started with going into here, this is the last kind of script that I'm ending up. Actually, not the last. It's just the beginning of using a geometric application towards the Fibonacci function, and I put all the samples they've done into numbered functions, which will be available on GitHub as well. And certainly my Patreon, I'll break it down into further details. So even though this one starts up that I'm actually in the functions section, so if you go back to here, you'll notice that it's not till here that you get to function section 3. But the first versions of Introduction to Variables, Operators, List Basics, Conditionals, Loops, and While Loops, I have already made single videos, which you may or may not have seen over here. If I was to jump in and see where I'm at, I'll probably have to make Grasshopper a little bigger to jump in there. I've got my other files that are up here. So if you took a look at, actually, I think I could just jump into here. It'd be easier. I think it starts with file open, and what I've got on my desktops are my Python member files. I jump in here into the basics, and then really I started here with this kind of new 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're quite repetitive as I go through, but these are the files that are available on GitHub. So as you go into one, you'll notice that I can leave this form, and you'll jump into an application of the most basic scripts as they got started. So in that first introductory, there's been introductions, some files that are provided for you. And what I did was I basically wanted to make that a little more exciting. So what I ended up doing was taking that maths and function here. Got a little 4-year-old making a ton of noise in the other room, but mom will handle that, I think. So basically, I'm running a script using a little bit of maths, and I'm building a surface edit. And when you take a look in here, you can see what that actually is. And I played off and did this for a while, and I showed examples of how to gain power and control over that. And you can play with that, and that's all been done with a little polar array, and it ends up with a kind of interesting mirrored script like this. You can grab both sides of it if you want to pull it together, and you're left with a pretty cool geometry. So that was the one. The file open, if you went in here and you look at the file 2, it jumps in here and grabs another file, which is this strange one. And I guess I'll just pull it up into here and probably make it shaded so you can see it. And that file, once again, has been applied to this script, which is a for loop in range X, and I provided details of that. And I started using what there were examples of remove, insert, count. So I'm not going into full detail. I'm just giving a quick little overview of this, and you're ended up with this kind of cool extrusion. You can play with that in the size and scale, just dealing three-dimensionally with what's happening. And then with that, I've played around with points and attractors to kind of move things around and push and pull. I don't think it's an attractive point. It's more just inserting a point, removing a point, and adding a point. And it's complicated to start, but I've done these files. They're already up on YouTube. The third one, as I jump in here and go into here, this one's similar in script, so I need to close that one, make sure I open the correct one. And you can see that I'm moving out a point and I'm moving one in, and then I'm getting a little more controlled. I've played off the same point, so you can see I can kind of move that point as I start to undulate that and change it. Actually, my amplification's not doing it. You're not going to catch much in there. Let me go into something that's kind of ghosted or x-rayed. That might actually make sense, and it's certainly going to work better in a render. But as I can move those points and take them around, I can make the one smaller and larger within it. I can move those points up and down in the Z direction. I certainly can move them over in the Y and the Z, and you have control of building a pretty cool object. And the reason I did that one was as I bake that and join it, you see you have this object that's kind of shallower on the bottom and thicker on the top, and you make this hollow form, and it's actually a closed brep, which is kind of an interesting object if you wanted to make it. Anyhow, I did a video on that one as well, so we'll close that one out, and that was number 3. and still plugging through. I think as we go in here and hit open and jump into 4, you're going to see that I start, what are we on to now? We're still looking into functions and pulling in a lot of information, and I'm starting to do test points, counting items, I think list lengths, making those points kind of alter, and I'm walking this kind of, as the geometry changes, as this jumps lower, you'll see what happens. I think as I jump lower, now I still got this point can kind of walk along those points as I change it. So let me try and just play with that. Well, it can leave the surface. There's a bunch of testing. You've got a ton of spheres that are being played, the minimum and maximum, and that's really where I'm getting into a few more functions that come out of Python. But once again, I've done a whole script on that. It's there available for you to look at. It will get interesting here in a second. Just bear with me. Opening up as we go farther into 5. I've got a script that's much more interesting in what it does. So if this is equal, it'll jump back and balance out. You'll see it within the script. A little bit of maths here that I've played with in for, elif, and else statements. And then I think I've ended up that if that one climbs higher, this one will really kind of skyrocket up in that direction. But I like it best when x is a little higher than y, because you get these kind of cool surface edits that you can amplify and have this rippled effect with a little bit of math. So I've brought in the absolute value, and I brought in math to do some things with, I thought, sine. Yeah, the sine of that hand. Once again, the video is out there for you to look at if that's something you want to look at, and that's 5. Now let's just keep going and having a look at 6, because we're getting close to the end, but you'll see where it starts to explode, and I'm going to go into full detail. This one's pretty interesting. It's got a script, and after those elif statements, I put down this max count length so I could control whether these points, as they run along the surface of this, they're dancing back and forth because of a little bit of logic here at modulus 2. And once again, I've done another video there, which is the 06, new 06, which I've already posted. So you'll understand why that kind of does what it does as you're moving through it. If I took this item and just removed it, I think you'll have a better sense of what's happening. I'll just X that out, and I'm going to run that through a animation. And here it goes, and you'll see that little dot will run pretty similar. Oh my gosh, it's taking forever. Something happened because of my probably other files open. No, that should be fine. Just don't know why that one's moving so drastically slow. Maybe I have other things open. We'll try and escape that and just get out of that. Moving a little too slow, so I'm going to dance back here, put that one back, and should be able to test that script and see where it's going. All right, that's number 6, and what'll happen here is number 7, and those videos and files are already out there. So video 7, we're getting close to the end, and dog's starting to bark now. Pretty simple script here. Little logic while I love using a little bit here. What was I doing? Oh, I got into the while loops and the for loops. And that's coming out of jumping into here and realizing that we're down past the conditionals and we're actually using these loops and we're using the while loops. And we're going to jump into this functions at chapter 3 soon enough. Right now, if we took this and we grabbed all this geometry and enabled that, you're going to see that we have just playing off of lists and controlling things over here for range, the length, the range in 3, and you can see where I was just playing around with a few numbers. Not too exciting. Close that one out, and then the while loop is while this is 7. If I bring this open, while this one kind of climbs is less than 10, you can see that it'll print smaller than 10. So those are her scripts. I didn't do much with those while loops yet, but you'll see their applications in a minute. So I'm just going to close that. And now we're going to go into open 8. Where is it? Down here. And this is where we start getting the functions, and this is where it really blows up. So what I have here is not only all of the work done in functions till the end of this lecture. So you'll do all the functions, all the points, all the curves, all the geometries, and the resources. And what I've done there is I've tried to jazz them up a bit. So if I go into here, and we'll close out this last one. Let's take it all and make them all disabled, which would be best for all the Python scripts. And then we go into that first one. What happens is as I jump in here and I put down enable, you'll see things get complicated really quick. So all of the things that are on there, I've played with them a little bit. I've changed them up. I've done a little swapping in the words, made them a little interesting. But the real thing I did in here was I put everything that was being produced in functions. After this, I kept as many as possible, unless they're Python functions, into definitions so I can run them. And I run them as my first function /001. And you'll see I have multi here. So I can go into here as well and run this one. and you'll see that that one's running as multi 002 underscore 002, and that's just a multiplication factor. You'll see as I creep down here, odd and even, pretty simple scripts to start. So I'll just slide this one down in here. You'll see what's happening. Not too much geometries as of yet, but there you got the LF and odd and even. So if I ran that one, you'd see how that one actually runs. And as those numbers change, you'll see that functions differently. Now, these are all straight out of what was done specifically in this course. So really, it's a little bit of subtleties. Nilufar Zaker, I hope I say the name right. I have been corresponding with them a little bit. But basically, then it gets interesting with Fibonacci. So what I've done now, and I know you've been holding on for 10 minutes already, is I've taken a script like this. I can make that enabled. I can look at that script, which is Fibonacci script. Now, what would I do with it to make it interesting? And this is where I'm going. I think with the basic information, as you start to write these and write them in the functions themselves, and we're at Fibonacci underscore 004, you'll see it goes on the points, and I have points, which should be, I should probably just dive into here and put points underscore 005 just to name it correctly. And you'll see that that's actually what will be running in that script. So as I click this and move it in, you'll see that, yeah, points 005 is the function. I have to call that function. And you'll get better and better at actually operating how that actually works outside of just typing script. You can call upon these functions whenever you want. And here's where I think it gets interesting, the most interesting, even though I'm doing some polylines after. I was playing around a little bit with these points and trying to find out ways of getting them to run within the functions. So I had this little subtlety that I was like, okay, it runs fine here when it's in there, but when I've tucked it in the function, what do I have to do differently? And you'll see this polyline dot append depends on making additional lists, polyline at list, and you'll see the details of that as well. That's really a tricky sticky point in here. But as this goes through, you'll see after that, you'll see the surface at 007. You'll see the sphere, which should be 008, and not sphere, but the attractor at 008, following through, and then getting in the curves, the divide curve at 009. And these are all literally functions that then I'm calling upon after. And I'm doing a lot of jazz to kind of fix them up, but it's not quite enough. So whereas I may have one over here that does a little bit different, you can see I have a little bit of plugins and outputs that are similar or different from what was happening within this this course curriculum. You've held on for 12 minutes, and what I want to say about this is that what I've done is as I go into File and I open the 009 where I'm at, the geometric applications, that's what I'm starting to do, and this is where it gets critically important to see what's going on here. So I've taken all those things I just showed you. I'll be color coding them different. The first one was the functions, which we covered. The second one was the points. The third one was the curves. It keeps going, and then you get into the geometries, and then I think you get into the resources that come after. That's basically her course. Then what I've done is brought them over here, and I started to do things to them. Now, if the script was so simple, like that first one, my first function, I left it as the multiplier. I left it as here, but this is where it gets interesting right here. So right now, how do I build this geometry and get ready for the next section? There's the geometry I've created. And that's the one you saw at the beginning of the clip. So going in here and hitting a little bit of rendered, you're going to see, actually maybe shaded. I can go in there, I can bake this object, and I will take that to bake and group it, or not group it, and there you can see what you have. And then when you pull it out of here, you can see it in all its forms, technical, pen, ink, and then hopefully rendered. The rendered file, you can leave your grasshopper afterwards, and you can see what's happening within the analyze surface zebra, and you're going to end up having this form and this form, and there you go. You've got a pretty nice detailed object that is based on the Fibonacci script, and the Fibonacci script is as simple as here. Now, what I did to it, and I'll break this down a little bit here, which is a little more elaborate than what I was doing on this object. You can see it here. Is I've got a series that'll run into it. So I have brought in, not n, but I brought in x over here, calling x, which will then be read into the function as n. And I can play with things on here to change the size of what's happening throughout the numbers that are being generated. Right now, what's being generated is 1 through 8 because x is set at this series, which will ask me for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the series. So you get the numbers of Fibonacci series coming out. And basically with those numbers, that's what gets interesting, is I'll delete these and I'll go back into the grasshopper, is as I change those counts and move them around, you can see that I have control over that form. Yeah, I think I get the family to be a little quieter, but as you can see here, as I've played with that kind of satellite, like blown that out of the water, let me go back into here and take that step a little bit back down where it was, because that's too high for the step. I'll set it back at 2. Actually, 3 might be too high as well. That's going to give me some huge numbers over here as I take a step through those counts. So you still have this total blowing up of this form. So I think I'll leave it as 1 as the count to get through, so we can at least wrestle with this form. It's not so important that that's on. But it is a simple geometry. It's coming from these numbers which are being outputted. And if those outputted numbers are brought into something like all of this information, I'll just pull this in here, and I'll make it on preview. Preview on. You see that I basically take those numbers, and let me delete this, ungroup that. You can see that I'm generating these numbers out of here, but because I'm generating them from a series, they're creating some pretty cool lists of information. So it's coming out right here as this series, 2 through 6. But what's happening is I'm ending up doing some wonderful things with that information as I continue. So I'm just going to show you right here that those are the numbers coming out. Pretty simple. Those are the XYZ coordinates as I play. And I have a little multiplier on here with a range tool that I can send through 2 pi. So I can change that very quickly, open it up and close that form, which is kind of nice to do. Maybe I'll put it back into here so you can see what's happening on shaded. Maybe we'll go to artistic. What the heck? So there we go. You've got some pretty nice control over this rotation in 2 pi to I like the shape and what's happening. And that's just from the Fibonacci series numbers. So what would you do with it? And I do a little rotation, polar array, which I run it through the same range, which is kind of cool how that lifts it up and changes that. I do a little piping. I clean the tree because I want to get rid of that one. That's the single one, which is in a line, and I'm going to loft it. And then as soon as lofting it, I have a pretty simple algorithm to use all the time. And this is it. It comes out of this snippet tool, which is my surface normal 2 extrusions. And then basically you're left with that object. And all I did at the end was just mirror it and mirror it against one surface. So as I change that surface, I can change kind of how that one reflects. But I like the one set at 2. I'll be sharing these kind of creative scripts, but what would you do with the Fibonacci series? Why would you take it into something like that? That's really the main goal. And then I'll just pull this back into render, and I'll put that back into a bake and probably delete all that other information so you're not seeing it. So quick little bake over here from the group, bake, and we'll group it together. Yes, and there you go. You got a nice little object, and you can render it out whatever you want. You can take it into the surface analysis. Actually, I'll do a curvature analysis, which could be fun. There we go. And just pull this one down. And it's in the way as it's kind of thinking about what doing. And there you go. You get a really nice curvature analysis on this thing. What is happening? How is that being read? And actually, I really like this form right here. Really nice kind of object as to what's being made. And you can kind of get a sense of that over here as well. So, you know, the Fibonacci series is going to make for some really cool geometries, simple little script, how you would play with it, how you would affect that later on, depending on how snazzy or how crazy you want to make it. And then also that's really just a scale factor. And then anything hard-coded in here are numbers. You could actually start playing with different numbers if you want to start with different Fibonacci series to explode it up or not. But that's what I'm doing. So that whole thing is basically revisiting this script that's come through that, going through the functions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go at, when I'm done that one, I'm going to group that one as group. I'm going to set that to the same color as that blue because that's how I initially got it. Come in here. It's always so tricky. This color. There we go. And then I'll go over here and grab these yellows and see what I can do to those. So I'm going to go right into here to the top and say, okay, what's happening with this one? I can leave this one, and we can put it back on all views. Get a little select open, and we'll put that one back on shaded. Now we'll go into here and we'll activate this one. Enable. Oops. enable and preview on, and then what we want to do is go back into here and close out whatever other one I had open. Probably be smarter to take everything and just take it to disable. And now you've got another surface that we can start playing with. You can see I'm start playing with curves and lines, and that's right out of the script again. So this one will be the point section. I'll be going in hard and breaking down all these areas of here as we get through the functions. I think the best example is to jump in here, see where you are as a course. Sorry, I had it here. There it is. And so you can break that down and get into the points. And whatever's done with those points, I'm going to try and do something snazzy with those as I make them more of a function. So those points will run not just as a function, but within a function definition, point definition. And then I can call upon it whenever I want. We'll keep going. And once again, the polylines outside of here, I haven't appended it. We'll go into a little more detail I spoke earlier as we get through that one. Then I'll bring it into a function and make it work. So this is enabling and previewing on. You can see that one's a little different than the other one because it was playing with a little bit of different data. And we'll close up this one. We'll open this one. And we'll say, okay, now we've got something different. We've got the definition working because we have the added list. Polyline is an empty list, and we brought it as polyline and appending it. So that's tucked into the function. I can call that polyline. So there's a nice little thing that I'll show you the details of. And then we will just keep going. We'll take this one here, and we'll close that one, and we'll make this one enabled. And we'll go in here and see what kind of script's happening here. And also the other thing to do is make that all previewable. And you'll see that now we're getting into the system of what was put together over here by, let's give her credit as well, Nilafar Zaker pulls this one together, and I just have it there. So what would I do creatively with that? What would I probably wouldn't focus on this. I would turn that preview off. I would go into the surface edit because I find the surface edit is always much more interesting as to what I'll do with it. So being able to control this surface edit with this simple range of maths, which is similar to what I was doing earlier, I'll try jazzing that up into something. And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll take this and we'll slowly keep extending that script. And I think because these ones are pretty basic, I'll leave those ones alone. And so this is the one I really will hit right now. And then I think the final one is something else that kind of plays off. But there's the script that we'll leave as it is base and probably play with maybe a couple of inputs if we have to go into here. But then we'll start changing what can we do with that surface to make it interesting, because that's a really wonderful, powerful parametric surface to what I'm using. You can really have a lot of control over it, and all the credit does go to that basic tutorial. But I'll try and make it interesting, because the point is not just to script these and memorize these Python scripts, but start to visualize what's happening afterwards. Some people like to deal in meshes, but I really am not one to get stuck in meshes too much, or Weaverbird and all those plugins. I think I actually like to create mathematically things out of this. So that's a 23-minute video. It's pretty jumbly. You get a sense of what I'm doing. I'm going to break it into everything independently as I slowly build it, starting with this script. And as each one becomes more and more creative, we'll then go in here and we'll grab these scripts, and we'll just maybe close this one out and make this one, I don't know, give it another color. We'll take this one for starters, and we'll just do a quick copy and paste it, because we'll be bringing that one over, which is dealing with curves after the points. And then we'll take this one, and we'll bring this one over and copy and paste it and slide that one over, because that will be dealing with geometries. You can see what's happening, and then basically I'll just keep color coding them so they're actually playing off of the same thing. So this one will be grouped and color coded for your reference. So again, this is always a little tricky. Send it to yellow. There we go. And then this one will probably take into color. What color should we make that one? We'll make it a nice red. And then we'll turn this one into the same thing, color red. So this is a little simple, but just trying to get organized and get our heads in the same spot. And then the last one I'll just leave purple. So you'll have everything all the way through, and slowly these will become longer and longer scripts as they become geometrically more interesting. But this is the one I'm going to play with in this set, and hopefully I can do something interesting that makes you want to script and code and write basic Python, and then have parametric control through your inputs to your Python node that will affect your later geometries, not unlike the one I showed earlier with a few surface edits and normal extrusions. Thanks very much for watching. Sorry it was a little chaotic, but it's a lot of information of what I've kind of been working on in the last week, and I will break it into little nuts and bolts and share that with my Patreon followers in detail, and the GitHubs will be available as well.